Let's do this. Hello, interwebs, and welcome to Close Up. I'm your co-host, Joe.
And I'm Ryan.
The Star Wars sequels. Some of the most divisive films ever made. And we're going to give them our most passionate defense today. Not because we like them, to be clear, but because we wanted a challenge. And it might be entertaining. You'll be the judge. Prepare for us to be insanely passive-aggressive today.
Mm-hmm.
Future generations, however, may thank us. They'll say, look at them, they defended the sequels before it was cool. And it probably will be cool one day when the kids who grew up with the sequels are old enough. Just like we defended the prequels when we were old enough. But let's skip right past our medium shot. We don't need context for this. We're gonna get into our backgrounds anyway as we go.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to just kind of bounce back and forth on this? Do episode?
Yeah, let's just do best.
Just whatever comes up.
Yeah, we'll do episode by episode, and then bounce back.
Well, let's not even get into the movie itself right away. I want to talk about how episode 7, I think a good defense for episode 7 to me is how I remember it. Because however the movie actually is, I think it's my favorite movie experience of all time. It's because I still remember the lead up to that, right? You know, the trailers were coming out. Everybody was freaking out. The Chewie, we're home trailer was viral. It blew up. Everybody was going crazy. What? Han Solo, Harrison Ford's back. This is nuts. Everyone was in like the most hyped I've ever seen anybody going into anything pretty well. I feel like the hype for this even beat out Infinity War and Endgame. Like people were losing their minds over Force Awakens when it came out. And I still remember the little theater in my town managed to get it somehow opening night at 7:00. The Thursday night, and we were like, what? You actually got it? Because this theater usually did second run movies. And my friend was like, he decided to come with us like last minute because he was trying to get tickets elsewhere, I think. And then we went into the theater on lunch from school. Like we walked downtown and got the theater, and he got the last ticket that the theater was selling for opening night. And we're like, hell yeah. And then there's actually a picture of us the theater crew took the night of the movie started. We were like in the front line. We were like the first 5 people into the theater to see. Like it was, I think my brother and his friends were like just ahead of us. And then it was me and my friends. So we were like the first group going into opening night for The Force Awakens, one of the first showings on the continent. And like the vibe was nuts. People were dressing up. Everyone was so hyped. And I still remember I was sitting next to my one friend and we were joking, so how many times do you think the stormtroopers are going to miss in this one? We're laughing about it. Opening scene, they massacre the village. We're like, oh my God. That game's gone from scene 1. It was just an all-around fantastic movie-going experience. And even the vibe kept going afterwards. I remember the day after that, at the school talent show, a couple of my friends and I played Cantina Band as a trio. I was on clarinet. My one friend was on marimba. The other one was on tuba. And then I think for the winter concert, like a month or 2 later, my band even got the Force Awakens sheet music for John Williams' score. And like everyone, like all the nerds in the band absolutely loved it. We all knew the score exactly, and we had like little gags planned. Like my brother Luke was even going to get like his replica lightsaber, and someone was going to hand it to him just for stupid gags that it was funny to us. But it was just, it's hard to replicate that vibe in high school. Like people were quoting it left and right. It was a thing. And however I feel about the movie itself, I still remember the fun everybody had talking about it and leading up to it and watching it, and even for a couple months afterwards, basically until The Last Jedi, and like riding off that cliffhanger for those couple of years. So from like, I'd say 2014 to 2017 or whenever The Last Jedi came out, like those were a really fun couple of years to be a Star Wars fan.
It was a great time.
And even though the trilogy, in my opinion, didn't turn out, it was a great couple of years at the beginning.
I agree. I mean, this movie I saw in theaters 3 times. I saw it once with my buddy Taylor, who we promised to see every Star Wars movie together in theaters, or every
Yeah.
like main trilogy movie, and we
Yeah.
successfully did that. Saw it once again with my brother, and then I saw it once again with my dad, I believe. It was my dad or both my parents. And yeah, the hype was real. I mean, the marketing, you basically summed it up. The marketing for it, the merchandise was everywhere even before the movie came out. And even after the movie, all the fan theories, like probably the most popular videos on YouTube at the time were what's going to happen in Last Jedi, or who's Rey's parents, what has Luke been doing, why did Ben, who's Snoke? Like that was the big questions. Like the hype
Yeah.
was real, which was probably what added to the downfall of the trilogy as well, was people got way too hyped and way too into it. But
Yeah.
we'll get into that.
Yeah, I think my brother was the biggest fan of that movie. I know. He saw the movie 7 times in theaters.
Wow. 7 times.
Yeah, that I remember. He may have even seen it more. He saw it at least 7 times in theaters. More when I think he got it the first day it came out on Blu-ray. He watched it more then too. You'll find you're hard pressed to find a guy who hates the sequels more than he does now, but when Force Awakens first came out, he was all over that.
Right.
And I wasn't as into it as much as he was, but like, once again, like the quotes, he could quote that movie front to back. He probably knows every line in that movie to this day because of how he and his friends were. The other best thing about Force Awakens and this entire trilogy is it gave the world Adam Driver as Kylo Ren. I'll throw that in right away.
Yeah.
I know Adam Driver was a thing before. I think he did indie movies and whatnot. Same thing with Oscar Isaac. They were both in stuff, but they never been. Yeah, but they never been
well known, but they were known.
They're not like, even John Boyega had been in a couple successful movies. Like Daisy Ridley was a total unknown at the time, but let's focus on Adam Driver for a little bit right now, because I think he was the best find in this whole trilogy. Him being the only surviving Skywalker pretty well by the end, and well, even then he died, but there was a point he was the last Skywalker. His story to me was the most consistent, because I kind of liked how it starts in the middle of his story. You know that he was a Jedi once, he already went bad, but even from the trailers, he was fascinating to me, because you see he's got this shrine to Darth Vader, and he's talking to his grandfather like, oh yeah, I'm going to finish what you started. And, well, he didn't really know what that meant at the time. But just this idea of him struggling to be pulled back by the light. He's like, I gotta be edgy as possible, and kind of this emo teen sort of guy, because I am good on the inside, but I'm trying to convince myself and everybody else I'm a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that's an interesting draw for the main villain. Because Anakin was, yeah, he was a good guy too, but he just went down a dark path. And Luke kind of had that pull to, oh, well, if I use the dark side, maybe I'll get further ahead in good aims. And Kylo Ren's just like, no, he's actually a decent guy, all things considered, but he just really wants to be bad.
Yeah, he wants it so bad.
Because he committed, he's kind of like Darth Vader in that way, really, because he kind of took a bad path and feels like obligated to keep staying on it. Like, oh, I helped destroy Luke's Jedi temple, and I allied myself with Snoke. So now I feel like I've got to keep doing this because my family probably won't want to take me back. And that's why he had to kill Han, because Han did forgive him in the end. And he's like, well, crap, Dad forgave me. I got to kill him, or else I will turn back and go with him.
He's so obsessed with power and like the betrayal he felt from Luke that he's just kind of clouded by it. And it makes a lot of sense with why he would want to kill his dad, because he feels conflicted by it. His dad sent him to Luke. he probably feels that he was never really in his life that much. Um, and so it does make sense, and I agree with you. Kylo Ren was definitely the most consistent character throughout this entire sequel trilogy. His passion really has always just been try to prove himself, and more so
Yeah.
tries to in I feel like in this movie, but also in Last Jedi as well, trying to prove himself to Snoke, or trying to prove himself basically to himself that like, yeah, he can be like Darth Vader, he can be one of the most powerful beings in the universe and not feel undermined by his family or Luke.
Yeah.
Um and he's got, I'm just gonna say it, he's got a cool lightsaber. It's a great design.
Yeah. With the
All the
exhaust
haters are like,
ports.
it doesn't, yeah, it doesn't make sense if the lightsaber got caught. It's like, it's a cool design. It's an ancient
Whatever.
design. It's something he did, and it's technically a fucked up lightsaber. You know, the reason why it looks all broken is because it is broken. I just, it's a
Yeah.
well crafted design.
Yeah. To me, I like his moments of conflict, like when he's well, I think in The Last Jedi where he's attacking the ship and he's gonna blow up the bridge that Leia's on, but then he hesitates
Mhm.
and he doesn't take the shot. Well, the bridge gets blown up anyway, but he didn't take the shot because he
Yeah.
couldn't bring himself to do it. Or even later in that movie when Snoke's like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna kill her. I feel you twisting the saber. You're gonna activate it." And to me, the reason he didn't just dip out there was because once again he's like, "Oh, I committed. I'm already a bad guy and I killed my master." So Ray's probably like, "Okay, well you can just quit now." And he's like, "No, I got to double down because that's kind of my whole character at this point. I'm going to be supreme leader and keep going on this path because I gotta, like, I've convinced myself this is what I've got to do, so I'm gonna keep doing it." And then in Rise of Skywalker, one of the best parts is when Leia calls out to him and then she forgives him too, and she distracts him just long enough for Rey to stab him. And that was
Mhm.
kind of his wake up call. He's like, because he's always a mama's boy too.
Yeah.
And then he sees that memory of Han Solo. That's the best part of Rise of Skywalker for me, was when that scene replayed.
Absolutely.
Not the least because I didn't expect Harrison Ford to ever come back after Force Awakens.
Oh yeah.
I
Huge
was like,
shocker.
what the? He came back for this?
Mhm.
But that was the best scene in that movie, where he finally accepts Han's forgiveness and whips his lightsaber out into the ocean.
Mhm.
And then he has his redemption arc and goes to help Rey and beat Palpatine. And Kylo Ren's got the most complete arc of this whole trilogy. His is the only one that actually kind of makes sense from start to finish.
Yeah. I liked you brought up I do love that Rise of Skywalker piece as well. It's a great moment. It also calls back to Force Awakens a lot.
I know what I
At
have
the
to
same
do, but I
time.
don't know if I have the strength to do it.
Yeah.
And
And then
this
he's like,
time he's like,
Dad. And then he just goes, I know. It's like, aw, it's nostalgia, baby, but it's good. But I really love that moment between him and Leia in Last Jedi where he's about to fire the missile, because I believe that was hyped up a lot in the trailers as well.
yeah,
And I
they're like, oh,
love
is
when,
Kylo going to kill Leia?
yeah, and I love when they do that forced perspective thing where, and they film it, it's well done in the original trilogy. Well, it starts in the original trilogy, and then they've just kept it the same throughout all sorts of media, where it looks like the two characters are looking directly at each other, but they're in two different locations. Like they can
Right.
feel each other's presence, and just the way those moments are shot, and the way like the music swells or whatever, and how the actors act, you can just feel like that they sense each other's presence really well. And just
Yeah.
like Leia's face, just like, don't do it. Just like, please, like my boy, don't do it. And you just feel the conflict in Adam Driver's face as he's almost about to hit, like, press, the button to kill his mom.
Yeah.
There's a funny moment though when I was first watching Force Awakens where Kyle reveals his face for the first time, and there's
Oh,
nothing
yeah.
wrong with his face. And
That
then
was funny. Yeah, I like that.
there was a woman behind me that went, "What?" Just like
For some
out of
reason,
the
that
blue.
felt like a reveal. I don't know why.
I
That was a
know.
common reaction, like, oh, nothing is wrong with this guy.
You're fine.
He
Yeah.
looks totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a great villain reversal, because I think you expect bad guys were sort of coded to believe or disfigured or look weird or whatever, and he's just normal white dude.
Yeah.
He looks fine. And that's why I think in The Last Jedi they gave him a scar, because he's okay. Well, now he's more messed up. He was riding that line, and now he's deeper into classic bad guy territory. He's got a scar now. So that's
and then he
thing.
adds the scar onto his helmet, which is pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, adds that in Rise of Skywalker.
I remember some criticism about Kylo Ren when Force Awakens first came out, where they're like, "Oh, he's just like a man baby." Like, what about that scene when he's just like, he's angry and he just starts slicing up the console?
It's hilarious.
Like, this guy isn't an intimidating villain. He's just a whiny baby. I'm like, yeah. So are all the Skywalkers. Are you new?
I want to go to Tossie Station and pick up some power converters.
I'm like, that's the point. He's not supposed to be intimidating. He's just a very powerful guy who's anyone older and wiser than we are can see that he's just a kid putting on a front.
Oh,
That's
also, we didn't know
point.
who Kylo Ren was when going into it.
True.
In terms of marketing. And then the reveal in the movie, the amount of gasps I heard when like, in the presence of your father, Han Solo, just, oh, what?
Yeah.
Just never thought that connection would happen. Because you didn't see his face, you didn't know who was under it. Again, Adam Driver wasn't really that well known. And you're just like, what the fuck?
I still
Great
think
reveal.
Yeah. And you know who else had a thing about parents that had reveals as well? Rey. That one was a bit more weird though. Gotta find a way to defend that. So all of Force Awakens basically says all of Force Awakens basically says your parentage is important. And Last Jedi says, no, your parentage doesn't matter. And then Rise of Skywalker says,
well, it is, but in a different way.
but it actually okay. Well, see, the thing is, you're the descendant of a Palpatine clone who was a nobody, and that didn't matter. But you're like basically Palpatine's granddaughter, but your parents didn't matter. That's true. So you're trying to have it both ways, which was a way to do it.
I personally believe that they were trying to set up Rey to be Skywalker's kid. All because of one scene where it's at the end of, it's one of my favorite moments in Star Wars where Kylo, he fights Finn and he like fucks up his back and then he tries to force pull the lightsaber. It's not working, it's jiggling, and then it flies over to Rey and then you hear the theme from the Twin Sunsets from A New Hope. And it's just like an awesome moment. And as like the music swells, she turns on the lightsaber and they do their fight and it's amazing. So that was my theory for years until they were like, they don't matter.
You know what? Now's the time I gotta defend that because, well, I mean, that's the whole point of this. But that pissed me off royally at the time. And a lot about The Last Jedi continues to piss me off royally. But that's not one of them. The fact that they tried to say her parents are nobody, I actually like that.
I was fine with it.
Now, to be fair, I still don't like it in the context of The Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker, where those two movies try to say, no, your parents were somebody. But taken on its own, if you hadn't put up in my mind that her parents were important, when that reveal would feel, I don't know, maybe a little less impactful. But that would just be like people building up their own theories instead of the movie telling you something's important and then saying it's not. It would be like, oh, people built up their own theories about who she was and they're just saying, oh, no, you're a nobody. Which I think works thematically for that movie because a large criticism of Star Wars is that it's a very insular tale where a couple of families, I guess in this point, the Emperor and I guess his family and the Skywalker clan are really the only important people. It's basically just about one family and a couple of their friends trying to make a difference in the galaxy. And then you have the sequels who They weren't connected at all, except in like, oh, Rey knew Han Solo. He was kind of a father figure to her. Leia sort of becomes a mother figure to her. Luke's one of her mentors. They're connected by mentorship and passing the torch that way. But to hear her say her parents were nobody, it's like, oh, wow, you're a very powerful person in the Force who came from nothing. It's not about like lineages, and midichlorians don't make one great. It goes back to the original idea of Star Wars that greatness can come from anywhere. Luke was just a farm boy who got embroiled in this galactic conflict and worked himself up through sheer will and determination to become a hero. Mind you, I don't think Rey's arc is that clean because she never had to try as hard as Luke did to rise from nothing. So it gets a little muddied there, but I still like the idea that you don't have to come from greatness to be great. On paper, that's good. And I've come around on it since that movie, though I was annoyed by it for a very, very long time.
Yeah. I as someone who was very into she's a Skywalker theory, and then they were like, oh, no, her parents were nobody. I was mad at the time, but then grew to be like, that's actually different, and I accept it. And then things happened.
I didn't mind the she's a Kenobi theory.
That didn't make sense to me. I mean, like, it could have made sense if maybe he got with Sabine, and then she was a descendant of, like, his... Oh, I know there's a theory that Sabine's nephew is Obi-Wan's kid with her because he has, like, orange hair, like the same colored hair as Obi-Wan.
Right.
Which has not been confirmed or denied yet. But I like that theory. Yeah. I'm sticking with that theory.
I don't mind that. Yeah.
Yeah. We should talk about Finn a little bit. the other main guy.
Well, what do we have to say about Finn? John Boyega's above this material. He's very... John Boyega, I think I like more as a personality than as Finn. To me, when I hear about these movies, John Boyega is like us. He's the fan who's like, yep, that went a way. And I didn't really agree with it. And Mark Hamill, too. But we can get into him later. But John Boyega was always pretty open about liking these movies from a fan's perspective and just being so happy to be able to be a part of it. He just kind of felt like the everyman and the voice of the fan base throughout all these movies. And he was just as disappointed as everybody else at his ultimate role in it, from what I gather, just based on what he's talked about. But yeah, he was always really good in it. I think he was the best in Force Awakens. He had the most interesting arc. Oh, this is pretty interesting. A stormtrooper who... Defecting because he grew a conscience. He was raised from birth to be a fighter, but the first time he actually saw combat, he's like, oh, this is what I'm fighting for? Well, I mean, propaganda is one thing, but now that I'm actually out on the field, I don't jive with this. And that was enough for him to defect. And I like how he had a rivalry with Captain Phasma as a subplot.
Yeah, that was good. I like that a lot.
The two of them had their back and forth. And then The Last Jedi cut that short. Oh, she died again. Great.
Oh, God.
Positive. Their rivalry was interesting.
And they had a better fight scene in a deleted scene anyway. Or a better ending to that fight scene.
Yeah, I also like that in Last Jedi he was a coward. Once again, I don't think I don't think they led up to it very well, but once again on paper, it's an interesting idea that Finn was a defector in Force Awakens. He saw a taste of combat, he ran. And then even though he went through the rest of Force Awakens kind of just by accident trying to survive. Oh, I got a lightsaber here. I'll defend this. Like, I want to help Rey, my friend, get out of danger. I like Poe. Oh, you survived. That's pretty cool. So he's got friends, but he still doesn't really care about the cause. So, oh, what do you know? First time things go very bad again, Nobody I know is in direct danger. Let's take the escape pod and get out. Because, sure, I don't really want to... I'm not a hero. I don't really want to do this combat thing. Which, I guess you could say came around full circle in the end, because the first scene of that movie is him trying to run away, and then the last is him trying to sacrifice himself for the greater good. So he did have a decent arc in The Last Jedi. I just don't remember the connective tissue very well. Canto Bite's all a blur.
Oh, God. Canto Bite.
Yeah, but he does gain a backbone in that movie and is willing to sacrifice himself. And would have been better if he got to sacrifice himself, because that would have been a very big shock if one of your trio is sacrificed in the middle installment, and B, it was like the perfect ending for him at that moment, which is why in Rise of Skywalker he doesn't really have a lot to do.
No, we're going to make him force sensitive now. Okay.
Which, okay, that's another idea I don't mind. They kind of hinted that he had Jedi potential in the first one. All the trailers were him with the lightsaber. Everyone expected him to be the hero of it. Really, Rey being the hero was the surprise, because all the marketing made it seem like it was Finn's story.
Yeah.
Or that he'd be a Jedi. Finn had the lightsaber for 90% of the movie.
Exactly. That would have been an interesting story to see what would happen if a defective stormtrooper was force sensitive and then turned out to just become a Jedi. So it's happened.
Yes.
Oh, man.
Okay, it's not canon anymore, but
yeah, it could be. Anyway.
Anybody who's my age or a little bit older remembers Dark Forces Jedi Knight video games. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I feel like I wanted it'd be interested to see if both of them were force sensitive, both Finn and Rey, and seeing them both trying to be like Jedis together. And like what would a story look like where they're both trying to sort of train with each other, but then it's not working, so then they have to go out and find Luke.
Yeah. I didn't even mind in Rise of Skywalker. Once again, I like a lot of the ideas that these have. In Rise of Skywalker, the main problem was that they spent the whole movie trying to beat around the bush that he was force sensitive. It's like, just tell Rey what you're thinking. Like, this was clearly cut and you did the character a disservice, but it would just tell us that he's force sensitive, because that'd be cool. But I also like that he found these other ex-stormtroopers and found a new sense of community too. Like, oh, there's a lot of other people like me out there who could probably use my help reacclimating into the galaxy at large. And so Finn goes on a journey of being this defecting coward to somebody who becomes more of a leader and is still looking for a place, but he doesn't end with a complete arc, is the problem. He starts as a defector who leaves his stability, and he ends Rise of Skywalker maybe force sensitive, maybe looking to be a Jedi, maybe going off with other ex-stormtroopers. He's starting to find a sense of community again. It's incomplete, but he was going in a direction. That's kind of interesting. Yeah. Maybe a romance with Poe, but that was just queer bait. That didn't happen.
And then maybe a romance with Rey, and then that was bait as well.
And then maybe a romance with that one girl in Rise of Skywalker, but that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Orphan. Finn nearly...
He gets no love.
He nearly had a complete story.
Yeah. I think the character they did the most dirty was Poe. Like in Force Awakens, he's sort of this... Yes, he's this like badass, cocky rebel pilot, but he's also... He's not like a... He doesn't not take like he's not a defector as well, or a like a guy who won't take orders, where in The Last Jedi he fully gets like an entire squadron killed and then gets demoted and then starts a mutiny, and then in The Rise of Skywalker he just argues with Rey all the time. It's like just like child banter, and that really pissed me off because Poe was one of my favorites, going into The Last Jedi.
Yeah. My brother always likes to tell the story of how that epic scene when Maz Kanata's castle's getting blown up.
So good.
And then that black X-Wing just comes in and starts wrecking all the TIE fighters. My brother
All in
leaned
one
over
shot.
to his friend, "That's a hell of a pilot." And then Finn, "That's one hell of a pilot." And it's like, yeah, I just said that.
So good. I love that scene.
Yes, the reveal he's still alive, which, okay, yeah, we knew he would be. He didn't kill off Oscar Isaac early on.
It's in the trailer. He's in the trailer.
Yeah. But he was a really cool character. Like, oh, you're a hotshot pilot who doesn't have the Force, but you're as good as you think you are.
Yeah. He's pretty damn good.
And I liked his banter with Finn too. He was they had great chemistry when they first met each other. It's like, oh, well, you're a defecting stormtrooper, but he's still kind of nice to him at the same time. Like, oh, you're willing to help me out? Okay. Yeah, we can do this together. Let's do this. Who are you? FN2187. I'll call you Finn.
Yeah.
Sure.
Makes sense. And I love Finn's dynamic with Han Solo as well, where he calls him Big Deal.
Big deal.
And then their little banner. Like, that's not how the Force works.
Force Awakens is a very quotable movie.
Yeah. I love Force Awakens. I think it's vastly underrated now because the entire sequel trilogy is out, but at the time, a lot of people loved it.
I never made a deal with Kanja Club. Tell that to Kanja Club.
Oh, so good.
Or even the little moments.
You ran the Kelsaron in 14 parsecs. 12! 14. He's like offended.
A lot of the moments were Han Solo.
Yeah.
Or when he uses
really good in it.
Or when he uses Chewie's bowcaster.
Mm-hmm.
I like this thing.
Let me try that. Yeah, we've talked about this before, but when Harrison Ford cares about something and tries, he puts on an amazing performance.
Yeah. Yeah, what I liked about Han Solo in this movie was that he didn't feel like I didn't like what they did with Luke.
A shoo-in.
Yeah, okay, I gotta compare this to what they did with Mark Hamill, which I'll try to defend as best I can later. But
I can defend it.
Last Jedi Luke never felt like Luke Skywalker to me. It felt completely like a different character that was just existing to further the plot that Rian Johnson made. Han Solo felt like an older version of Han Solo. He didn't have this is a Han that didn't end up staying with Leia. His son went bad. He fell on hard times. This Han didn't have a great future either, but he still felt like Han Solo, or a version of him I can believe as an older Han Solo who fell on some hard times. I never got that emotional disconnect with him. Mm-hmm. So, this isn't the version of Han Solo I wanted to see, but it also felt, yeah, okay, I can buy this for what it is. And Harrison Ford sold it very well. He's still a mentor. He's a good mentor to Rey. Teaches her a few things. And he gets some good moments with his son as well. Like the scene at the bridge where he gets killed. Still don't love how he actually died. Something about that always felt a little off to me. Not that he died, but just the way it was filmed. I never felt much emotion watching that scene like I wanted to. But
right.
But I didn't mind that he died by his son's hand.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, because Han, you think, oh, well, Han's the kind of guy who would shoot first. He'd think his way out of the situation. Yeah, but even the ever cynical Han Solo, his heart mellowed out when it came to his kid. He got too complacent around Ben. So with anybody else, yeah, I'd agree with you. He was being stupid. But with his kid, I'll buy it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that he went out that way. Yeah,
different connection. Yeah, I just really love Force Awakens because, yeah, it's almost like a 1-for-1 of New Hope in some ways, but it's got its little differences here and there, and just the way it's shot is amazing. It's especially the flying scenes as well. The action's really well done. I like the First Order look. Say what you
Hmm.
will about the Stormtroopers, but the new helmet design is really cool. It became iconic instantly. Um, yeah, just the sets alone, the different world buildings, out the different fights as well. Um,
And right now I'm
I
thinking of
think,
that scene where the Millennium Falcon's flying through the wreck of the Star
oh,
Destroyer
so good.
on Jakku. That's a great scene. What are some other action scenes? Or like the Maz Kanata castle scene when the TIE fighters are
Hmm.
wrecking house at the top there.
Yeah, when they're on the Star Killer planet.
Star Killer
Um,
base, yeah.
yeah, and that moment where when they use the weapon for the first time and they just completely annihilate the
The Republic.
Republic.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, these guys aren't these guys aren't fucking
They ain't messing
around. They
around, yeah.
just destroyed entire star systems. Insane.
Well, that Star Killer base thing reminds me that one of the best things to come from The Force Awakens was the SNL sketch Undercover Boss Star Killer Base.
Yep.
That's a classic.
Hmm. My
It's
name's
one of my
Kevin.
favorite SNL sketches I've ever seen. Where's
It
my
was so good
muffin,
they did
Matt?
another one. Yeah.
Kylo Ren is a punk bitch. I bet he's 30 pounds soaking wet under that little black dress of his. Oh, look,
Yeah.
he's choking on food.
So good. Adam Driver has a great sense of humor.
It's incredible. And the sequel was funny too. Okay, boomer.
Oh man, when SNL was good. Anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, Force Awakens got criticized for being too similar to A New Hope, like he said. But that's something I never really minded because I know George Lucas has talked in the past about how the saga is like poetry. It's supposed to rhyme. They have like A New Hope and Phantom Menace. There's a lot of similar beats in those installments. They do feel more distinct from each other, but it's like, oh, the orphan on the desert planet gets the call to adventure and goes off to fight the thing. They blow up a starship at the end. Like, you could say Phantom Menace followed a lot of the same beats as well.
Mm-hmm.
Force Awakens was just more directly inspired by A New Hope than Phantom Menace was. And it was a
Right.
little, and I know George Lucas complained that visually it was less innovative. They didn't push technology forward as much. They didn't use different styles of ships or really invent a lot of new things for it. But in terms of the fact that it's too similar, I never really cared because it worked. Like, it was basically, look, I know people, they, I can't think of the idea. They balk at the idea of remaking Star Wars ever. Force Awakens was basically that. It was a modern remake of Star Wars with a new skin on it that just so happened to be in continuity. And it was good. You know what? It's not as good as A New Hope, but it's a good movie. And the fact that it's similar, whatever. It's a criticism, but it's not like, it doesn't make it a worse movie because it's too similar. It might make it repetitive if you're a Star Wars fan, but it's still a good movie.
Also, to be fair, I think like they had to play it safe. I mean, they're starting an entire trilogy.
Yeah.
And like I don't put any blame on J.J. Abrams at all. I put blame on the studio for not having the same director or writer be for the entire trilogy and say, hey, we're going to have 3 different directors and writers for these 3 different movies. And we're just going to hope that they gel together well.
Yeah.
They didn't. And that's what happened with Last Jedi. So much so that they were afraid to do the Duel of the Fates one. That's what the title was, or what
Colin Trevorrow's episode 9.
Mm-hmm. That's what his was going to be. That they were so afraid that they just brought back J.J. Abrams because they knew he was going to do what they wanted.
Yeah. Well, unlike Rise of Skywalker, I think episode 7 is arguably the best nostalgia bait movie ever made.
Yeah.
Because once again, it maybe takes a lot of liberties with, it pays a lot of homage to A New Hope, but it's still a good movie. You have all the little moments like, when Finn discovers the training ball on on the Millennium Falcon, or even just before that, the Millennium Falcon's reveal. What, that hunk of junk? Okay, the junk will do. They're going for, like, that's fun stuff. Or getting the lightsaber back from Oskanata's castle, or or Chewie getting his medal at the end. Whatever. Like, there's a lot of nostalgia bait moments, but I didn't mind it in those movies because they were subtle and they didn't affect the whole plot. Rise of Skywalker, the nostalgia bait was actually, sorry, that wasn't really nostalgia bait so much as
fan service.
Whatever the fans, it was fan service. Yeah.
Yeah.
Force Awakens handled fan service pretty well, all things considered. People whine about it being in there at all, but I'm like, I don't care. I felt serviced and not inconvenienced.
How can you not? It's one of the biggest franchises of all time. How can you not add some nostalgia bait or some fan service stuff?
Yeah.
Just going to completely ignore it?
Rise of Skywalker, however, leaned a little too far into it because it was basically just a checklist of what was like fan theories on Reddit. Because Last Jedi went out of its way to ignore most theories, Rise of Skywalker doubled down on all of them. But being positive, being positive about that, I will try to argue that the fan service is a good thing. Let's just say that many people were probably happy to see their theories get put on screen. Even though it didn't make sense because they tried to do all of them, a lot of them might have made sense if you were more focused. Rey being a Palpatine, okay. Like, that's not a problem, except that the last movie said her parents didn't matter. That was only a problem because you tried. But if you're just following off The Force Awakens and you ignore what The Last Jedi did, that reveal makes sense. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
And Rey and Kylo getting together, like they have a kiss at the end out of nowhere. Okay. They had a connection. They had a connection kind of thing going on, and they had decent chemistry, and I didn't think that was super weird. They just didn't lead up to it very well. Like things like that. Or Luke lifting the X-Wing out of the water from like, okay, you're just doing it because he didn't do it in the last one. That's not a bad moment, but your placement of it's the fact that they tried to have everything all at once.
Yeah.
It wasn't that the moments themselves were bad. It's just that they didn't want to lead up to it organically. So I got to be like, okay, fine for some of this.
Yeah. One of my small theories that I had was that when Kylo was hearing Darth Vader talk to him, it was through Snoke. Snoke was manipulating the Force to make him sound like Darth Vader, and that was kind of true, but it was technically Palpatine who was making himself sound like Snoke and Darth Vader.
Right.
So I was just like, I was like, that was I was like, there's a little check for me at the beginning of Rise of Skywalker. Yeah. All that fun jazz. So I guess I'll do it. I'll try to defend Luke.
You go for it, because I'll do my best, but I hate
Listen, I understand why
so
people are upset about it, because he is the embodiment of hope in this universe. He is the entire reason why the most evil man in the galaxy was able to turn good again. However, he has tried for many years to restart the Jedi Order, and then when he takes in a son of his sister and tries to work with him, he notices he's got some dark tendencies, and then he makes probably the biggest mistake of his life, where he contemplates, striking him down, but you could all obviously object to that and say that was the dark side trying to poke his head in again. Because, let's be honest, Luke has used some dark side shit before. I mean, at the beginning of Return of the Jedi, he choked the shit out of the 2 guards. He's always used it a little bit in his life. But then he hesitates. He stops himself. He was ashamed with himself when he did it. But it was too late. Ben saw what he was about to do. He knew that he saw that Snoke was manipulating him. Luke saw that Snoke was manipulating Kylo already, and then Kylo saw the last straw and then turned on him, destroyed his temple with everybody in it, and then that mistake would probably lead a lot of people to depression. And I fully believe that Luke would probably have given up at that time and probably excluded himself from wherever to that island world. Yes, I am pissed off at the throwaway joke of him throwing the lightsaber at the beginning of Last Jedi, because that was an epic moment at the end, or an epic cliffhanger at the end of episode 7, where you see him look at the lightsaber, and it's great acting by Mark Hamill where he sees it and he's like, holy fuck, it's back. And then it's just thrown away as a joke at the beginning of Last Jedi. That irks me a bit. But I fully believe the mental state that Luke is in The Last Jedi.
I don't. I understand that. Okay, I'm defending. I know the problems with it, but it never sat right with me. I understand that he's depressed. I understand that it would be a problem for him. What I can't condone is that I could maybe understand him not wanting to build another Jedi Order, but to decide that all the teachings were stupid and that I'm just going to exile myself on this island and die and not participate in any galactic events ever again, like you didn't help topple the Empire. Like, okay, sure, maybe the Jedi arrogance is what led to Sidious in the first place. That's what he did say. And he was kind of right there because of how they treated Anakin. But it's like, well, you gave it a shot, but you didn't really try. It's just the idea that he'd exile himself and not help out anybody else ever again, that he'd abandon Leia and Han and leave Kyle and just let Kylo Ren do whatever. Like, well, he turned. And I even understand that moment of hesitation where he's like, crap, maybe he went bad. How am I going to handle this? But to just take himself out of that situation entirely, to not try to redeem Ben Solo more, to leave Han and Leia and never see them again, that felt all wildly out of character to me. I can't condone that. This is another scenario where I say I don't mind the depression arc. That's fine. I mind that he did this and then they killed him off in that same movie.
Yeah.
I don't mind on paper.
That's my problem as well.
That's my main hang up with this. I don't care that they made Luke Skywalker go through a rough patch in his life. That's fine. But it's that the rough patch in his life was so shoehorned in, and his reaction to it felt so unlike the character I've come to know for most of my life. And even in the end, he doesn't leave the island. He still dies on the island. And
for some reason.
Yeah. And doesn't come back to keep going. And he saw that he was wrong, and then but then he dies anyway. It's like, well, what do you, it's just infuriating. It just felt like character assassination. And like, I don't know, most people who seem to love The Last Jedi don't care as much about Luke Skywalker. And most of the people who hate The Last Jedi care a lot about him. I'm just saying, when it comes to that character in particular, a lot of people are willing to give it a pass, except a lot of big fans of the character. It's like, well, maybe you're okay with that in principle because you never really cared for. It's like you said, he was the symbol of hope of this. He was the guy where Obi-Wan and Yoda realistically were like, Anakin's too far gone. He's, he destroyed our order and you got to kill him. And he's like, no, he's my father and I'm going to try to redeem him as best I can to save my friends, to help the rebels, and then I'll try to redeem my father at personal risk to myself. I'll throw away my lightsaber in front of the Emperor just because I'm not going to strike down my own father. This isn't the guy who would throw away everything because he got a little sad and because what he tried to do failed. It doesn't work for me.
I don't think it's because he got sad. I think it's just because it's the first time ever in his life that he has failed at being a Jedi. And he thinks that he can't be a Jedi in the right way. I mean, that's the whole reason.
It's just
He's like
yeah,
barely read the Jedi texts. He doesn't
yeah.
understand them. It fails him, and then Yoda comes in and he says failure's the greatest teacher.
Yeah, I think it's just the extreme. I don't mind that, once again, I don't care he's going through a rough patch. I mind that he gave up entirely and died there. And he never got a
Right.
serious redemption. I
Mhm.
like in principle that Luke was going through a rough patch and that Yoda was like, he calls him young Skywalker still in that movie, like he's humbling him, even though like he's an
Mhm.
old man, and Yoda still calls
Yeah.
him like,
That's what makes me mad too, is that he never got an actual redemption arc. But
yeah,
I think what people are saying, he wouldn't be depressed or he wouldn't be like that stuff to me makes sense. But the fact he never really got a redemption arc sucks.
yeah. It's, once again, it's not even that he would probably be depressed. It's just that he fell so far into depression, and then we never saw him pull his way out of it.
Yeah, that's what's tough.
That's just like, why would you make a story like that? Why would you why would you do that to Star Wars fans? And that's why I see The Last Jedi to me as, I don't like seeing it as the canon way the story went. It's way too unsatisfying for me as a Star Wars fan. This franchise that's all
Mhm.
about hope in the face of overwhelming odds, and the story and Luke Skywalker, the most hopeful character in the franchise, ends on such a somber note. It doesn't sit right with me whatsoever. But it's fine as an alternate take, as a, hey, this is a what if scenario. If I see it as not the way things went, I can accept it. Like, on paper, don't mind it. But as the canon version, as Mark Hamill's last hurrah as this character in live action, I know he came back in Rise of Skywalker, but that was a cameo. That wasn't the point.
Yeah.
It's, yeah, but positive. Positive.
Mhm.
Hey, this is Mark Hamill's greatest live action performance in the whole franchise.
Oh, for sure. Hmm.
The work he did here was exceptional.
I mean, it got hyped up so much. J.J. Abrams was like, he deserves an Oscar nomination
I think he did.
for this. Hmm.
He was so good. Um, the scene where I'm losing my train of thought. This happens on occasion. I'll even say that I liked his death scene a lot. I think it was the perfect death scene for Luke Skywalker. I just wish it hadn't been in that movie.
Yeah.
The idea that he's at peace with himself, he takes a look at a binary sunset, and then he just
Mhm.
fades away and becomes one with the Force after doing something awesome. Like, okay, that's a good ending for him. That he became at peace and he kind of faded himself away like Yoda did. It's like, oh, you're very powerful, and that's a good ending. It's just that he did it in the middle installment, and that's what bothers me.
Yeah.
He didn't get a good redemptive arc for that moment to feel paid off. It's kind of like Han. I felt nothing at that moment, and it pissed me off, even though I'm like, this would be a beautiful scene in a better movie. But taking that scene on its own, I like it.
Hmm.
And I do like,
I agree.
and I also like, in principle, the context leading up to it, how he went out.
Hmm.
Because it's kind of like, I don't like that he actually died there, but I like that the legend of Luke Skywalker, and this was the point, the legend of Luke Skywalker, it's known that he came back when hope was nearly lost for everybody. He comes out of nowhere looking like he's nearly in his prime, comes out with the blue lightsaber. A lot of people would remember him. Walks right up in front of the army of the First Order, gets blasted by all these AT-ATs, brushes it off, fights the Supreme Leader of the First Order in one-on-one combat, and holds everybody at bay until the rebels have a chance to escape, and then presumably dies there. But it's like they said, you need the spark to light the flame to burn down the First Order, and that was the moment. Nobody there had the power to inspire hope, but the legend of Luke Skywalker, well, he was wrong. The legends do matter, and he provided one last story to inspire everybody in the end, which I can get behind that in principle. That's fine. I still don't like, I don't think it was led up to very well.
It was too soon.
It was too soon, but I do like, in principle, that it was ultimately a hopeful message. He decided to use his legend one last time to be like, okay, well, I'm not going to make it through this, but what I do here will give the necessary push to make something good happen later. See, you could say his sacrifice was still worth it. It didn't feel worth it enough to me in that moment, was the problem.
Because they were so diminished. The rebels were so diminished. I mean, like, they kept losing ships throughout the movie, and then they did the holdover maneuver, which, like, cut the First Order's fleet in half, but not really. Yeah. And then they're just remnants at the point. Like, they're literally just remnants at the start of Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah. It's just... But I also like the idea that Luke is so powerful that he doesn't even need to touch Kylo Ren. Like, Kylo is just swinging at everything, and he's just dodging left and right. He's like, you can't even touch me, bro.
Yeah.
And they hint that
really
he wasn't...
funny.
And the hint that he wasn't even there because his feet on the red sand, everything that touched it, touched the white salt made it red. But if you're looking closely, his feet aren't doing anything. That's some pretty crazy filmmaking work there. But Kylo's making red everywhere. So there are hints of something bigger going on there. But I also like Kylo getting defeated in that moment by his own arrogance. He wants nothing more than to kill Luke Skywalker because he humiliated him. It's like, oh, well, this is... My mentor is another hurdle I need to pass, and then I don't even get the satisfaction of killing him. He just fades away. That's infuriating. For Kylo and the audience.
And the audience, yeah.
but you could say, yeah, that's putting me in Kylo's shoes. Luke did his thing, and it's frustrating, but it proved its point at that moment. Let's see.
Oh, The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
They really tried to push porgs on people, huh? Just like in terms of merchandising and...
Porgs are cute.
They're all right.
I like porgs.
So does Chewie.
Yeah.
Poor Chewbacca. All his friends die and no one cares to console him.
I know. Chewie's one of the most tragic figures of the sequels. Because everybody, Han, Luke, and Leia all die.
Yeah.
And nobody cares.
It's so funny. In Force Awakens made me realize he had like actual like fingers and thumbs. Because he was putting the detonator on and he like pressed his finger. Because all you really see is just a bunch of hair around his like hands. You don't see like the fingers. I don't know what I assumed. If it were claws or whatever. But I was like, huh. He's got human hands.
That's funny.
I always found that interesting.
Well, I got to give these sequels credit for another thing, too, is that they're the last time we see Peter Mayhew, Anthony Daniels, Kenny Baker. We got to give credit to the other supporting characters of the original cast, too.
Yeah.
Glad they came back. And Billy D. Williams as Lando in Episode 9. That's a plus for Episode 9. Like, hey, we finally see you, and you didn't get killed off. By the way The Last Jedi went, I fully expected Episode 9 to be like 3PO, R2, Chewbacca, and Lando aboard the Millennium Falcon.
Well,
and then the Millennium Falcon crashes and blows up. Like, yeah, that's how The Last Jedi basically went.
They like kill off 3PO, and then they restore his memory in the next scene. It's just like the weirdest thing.
Yeah, that was actually sad, though, when they had to erase his memory again.
Yeah.
And then they restored it. And I'm like, well, thanks for another meaningless sacrifice.
Yeah, it just didn't make sense. Just either have him die, or just don't have that plot in there at all.
Yeah.
Like, just didn't make sense.
Can you think of a defense for it?
For the C-3PO thing?
Yeah, try to spin it defensively.
Babu Freak!
Babu Freak is great.
If that scene didn't happen, we didn't get Babu Freak.
Yeah, one of the most
my defense
parts. For it. Let's see. I also like the droids in these movies. BB-8 in Rise of Skywalker. We get Dio.
Yes, BB-8 is hilarious. His interaction with Finn, where he's like, I'm not a rebel spy," he like backs up like, "What?"
Or the lighter thumb.
The lighter thumbs up is the funniest thing ever in these movies. It was just like never expected it. I was howling when that happened.
I mean, it gets a little goofy in The Last Jedi when he's spewing coins at people and riding a mech or
Oh my
whatever.
God.
But whatever, he's still
Yeah.
a good droid. And I like
He's
Dio.
like, "Who's this soccer ball?" But no, he's good.
And there's Dio, the lost puppy dog droid, who like they find
gosh.
abandoned on that ship. He's just like timid with people. Like, oh, you're
Poor little
cute.
guy.
I like.
Yeah, I like
Dio.
BB-8.
Yeah, the droids are good in these things. Going back,
We have yet to try to defend Rise of Skywalker.
we've chipped in a few things here and there. I'm gonna go back to The Force Awakens and defend that. J.J. Abrams has said that the reason Luke wasn't in Force Awakens more was because they thought he'd overpower everybody. They're like, well, we had drafts of the script, and every time Luke showed up, it took the spotlight away for everybody.
Right.
So we're like, yeah, let's just do episode 7 to focus on the new characters and then leave Luke for the end.
Which is super smart.
And I thought that was great because you spend the whole movie, where's Luke? Oh yeah, that's also the other crazy thing. Force Awakens opens up with the first line, Luke Skywalker has vanished. What?
Mm-hmm. Huh?
I'm interested. And then you have to wait till the very last scene of the movie. And I know people were pissed, when the lightsaber went flying by Kylo, they were like, oh, it should have been Luke. And it went to Rey. I'm like,
That would have
okay.
been so fan servicey.
And
if
that
it
would
was
have been
Luke, though.
Yeah, and that would have been fine, except it would have deprived us of the Jedi steps at the end when Rey's hiking up
slow walk
Octo.
up.
Hiking up Octo, you see him turn around on the cliff face, take off the hood, hand out the lightsaber. Look, I think that's got to be one of my favorite cliffhangers in movie history.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's up there with like Infinity War when everybody's like when they're dusted
Faded.
and the Avengers are at their lowest point, and it was like, what the hell are they gonna do? But I also knew what was gonna happen. I figured Endgame.
Yeah.
When I watched that, I'm like, oh, this is crazy, but I know a lot of them are coming back. But Force Awakens was like, I have no idea how this is gonna play out. This is crazy, and I gotta wait 3 more years to figure that out. That was nuts.
I really liked that they waited to keep Luke till the next movie.
It was
because
great.
it just builds up his legend of
Yeah.
like he's an important figure to this universe. And that's literally the main goal is to find him throughout the whole movie. Like that's their thing.
I just think that you can complain. A lot of people complain about The Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker, especially for not taking any chances and being way too safe. I think holding Luke Skywalker back until the very last scene of the movie is pretty ballsy.
Yeah. You don't use your main character for the original trilogy at all,
and
then
he doesn't
you just
even
leave him.
He doesn't even get a line in that movie.
Exactly.
He just gets a look. I know, it's crazy. Let's see.
Imagine if they did that with like Iron Man 2 and Robert Downey Jr. doesn't show up until like the very end.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just whatever.
Yeah.
People will complain about anything these days.
Let's see. I think the production design is great across all these movies.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
All the different locations from that first Star Destroyer Rey's in. She's living in an AT-AT to Maz Kanata's castle, the throne room in The Last Jedi, Octo, the crate, the sand planet, even Canto Bite's pretty cool. The Poe's homeworld, with the smugglers, the wreckage of the Death Star, Exegol, all really cool sets and locations.
Yeah, the production design for these movies never never has faults. They're all great. Especially when they have their own especially whenever there's lightsaber combat. They're all distinct, they're all different, and you gotta applaud them for that. That nothing feels too similar.
Yeah. I also think these movies were pretty integral in making a renaissance of practical effects back to Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
There was a long time there where it was, we're going to overuse CGI for literally everything possible. If we can not make something practical, we'll do it. And CGI wasn't that good, so it was it was becoming more and more of a crutch.
Yeah.
And then Force Awakens and Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, also Rogue One and Solo, really, I'll lump them in. They showed that big budget entertainment can rely on practical effects again. And I've seen a lot more franchises following suit ever since that.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you still get franchises that way overuse CGI. Marvel comes to mind off the top. But Star Wars has been doing pretty well for special effects work. And even the prequels, I think I appreciate their leaps forward in terms of visual effects technology, but because they were so innovative, they look a little dated now. Whereas the sequels, I think they're going to hold up a lot longer from a visual standpoint. They didn't create much, but they helped bring filmmaking in general back to
like a grounded reality.
Yeah, preferable roots in from where I stand.
Yeah.
They found the good blend.
Mm-hmm. So much so you're seeing even TV shows go back to practical effects.
Yes.
Which is a good thing because your brain goes, hey, that's real. And,
Yes.
and it's like, oh, someone actually made that.
And to be clear, CGI, you can have that, oh, it's real too if it's done well enough. But a real thing will always look like a real thing. CGI doesn't always. And that's the problem with it. Let's see, another great thing about these movies, John Williams.
Yep.
His episode 7 score in particular is one of my favorites in the entire franchise.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's
It's
just
very
because within the first few months, like I said, my band was playing it back in high school, and I got to immerse myself in those tracks more by actually participating in them, performing them. But tracks like Rey's theme, March of the Resistance, the Jedi Steps, incredible. I'll always...
Yeah, the music and the production design, the cinematography. The problems are just the story. Let's be honest, people. Like, you can have your own... It's just the writing.
I think The Last Jedi, for all its faults...
People higher up are trying to write for them, but there's producers. Kathleen Kennedy. Sorry, it's something in my throat.
I think The Last Jedi, for all its faults, is arguably the best-looking Star Wars movie from a cinematography standpoint.
The Last Jedi?
Yeah.
I would argue Force Awakens.
I just like the way The Last Jedi looks. Its color palette, the color choices it uses, like all the red and blacks, everything.
Yeah.
Everything feels more saturated and more deep and more... I think Rian Johnson uses more innovative camera techniques than J.J. Abrams too. So like for camera work and visual style, I think The Last Jedi looks and feels more unique than anything else. Force Awakens feels like other J.J. Abrams movies, which is fine, but Last Jedi feels more unique.
That's fair.
In terms of, like, Force Awakens felt like, oh, this is kind of a mix of what George Lucas was doing before, but updated, plus J.J. Abrams' unique style. But The Last Jedi, once again, you could argue that because it doesn't feel like other Star Wars movies, that's a bad thing. And normally I would. But I'm being positive, and I'm saying I like that it stands out as something all on its own.
Also, for people complaining about the hold-on maneuver and why they don't do it every time, it's because it's called suicide.
It's You're not going to... Yeah.
It's a kamikaze. Why wouldn't you kamikaze in real life all the time? Also, people who complain about it, it's an awesome effect.
It is. It's gorgeous.
It was a shocking moment. Gorgeous. The no sound in space is accurate.
Mm-hmm. Also, a defense about Admiral Holdo. She didn't need to tell Poe Jack.
Good luck.
Chain of command.
Yeah.
You don't need to know what's going on above you, and most people below commanders don't mutiny when they don't know what's going on. That was Poe's I mean, yeah, she could have told him. If she saw things going down, she probably should have told him what was going on, but she didn't need to tell him what was
I
going
think
on.
that's the part where I can't really defend her, because her reluctance to even say, don't worry, we have a plan and going somewhere, led to a mutiny. It's her bad leadership that sort of led to it. But I think they could have also made it a better story element if they just made her a spy for the First Order.
But I also think sometimes when characters are stupid in movies and people latch onto it, like, oh yeah, that shows you as a bad leader, and I'm like, okay, fine, sure. So why do we assume that wasn't intentional? Maybe because of the way it was executed. Maybe it's because we're supposed to think she was right. I don't know. But when I'm watching this and I say, yeah, she's a bad leader, to me that's just what I see at face value. A character made a stupid choice and consequences arose from it. Why does that have to be bad screenwriting? It was just, this is who this character is. She's not a good leader. And that can be fine. We don't have to say it's a screenwriting mistake. It's a character mistake.
I think it's because a part of her character knew she was being stupid, and she could have easily been smarter. I think that's the thing. Your point is very valid, and I agree with your point that a character can just be a fucking idiot and be a bad leader. I mean, there's so many of that in different types of media, but I think it's the part where it's like she knew she was fucking up, and she withheld information on purpose because she just didn't like Poe.
Yeah, that's a part of it. I just think there needs to be room in criticism for, the character screwed up, right? It wasn't necessarily bad screenwriting. Why you don't like what happened. Like, something's bad. Sometimes stupid things can happen in movies and it's okay.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
People always latch on to every stupid thing that happens in a movie and be like, well, why didn't they do that? Well, if you have met most people in real life, people are stupid. They make dumb decisions.
People are dumb.
Why do movie characters have to be smarter than us? Yeah.
Because I don't want people to be dumb in movies. They have to be as smart as me.
Yeah. All right, what else do I have here? All right, let's defend the idea that The Last Jedi is one big chase sequence.
Yeah.
I don't like the idea that it's happening because they're running out of fuel. I think that's dumb.
No, yeah.
But on paper, I like the idea that this smaller rebel crew is being chased by, like, with all their commanders on it, is being chased by a larger force, and they don't have any opportunities for backup, and it's just, okay, and they can track us through light speed now, so what's our plan here? How do we get out of this situation?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a pretty cool setup.
Yeah, and then that rebel force slowly being withered away, I think is a good plotline, and I think it adds to the eagerness of Poe of being like, you got to tell us that there's a fucking plan. Like, we're dying here. I think it adds to it very well.
Yeah. And I also don't mind him that much either. You could say his mutiny was stupid because, once again, chain of command, but also...
No, his mutiny was just. I'm a Poe defender.
Yeah, and that's fair too. That's what we're doing today. That's what we're
Oh, here we go. I see it in your notes. Ian McDermott. He's having a blast.
He's always having a blast as Palpatine.
Mm-hmm. I like his look. He's got like the little bit of the red robes as well. And I don't know what that hall is with a bunch of I don't know if they're statues or actual cult people. I was always confused watching that.
Yeah. Ian McDermott as Palpatine never disappoints.
Mm-hmm.
He's
great.
He's the baddest bad guy there's ever been in movies, probably. Just a pure evil. No redeeming factors about this guy at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine to me, because I think modern entertainment is too obsessed with the idea of not redemption, because that's a good thing, but just everybody's got to have a reason for being bad. They all have to be somewhat sympathetic. Like, oh, I understand where you're coming from. You're not that bad a guy after all. Like, no, some people are just evil. Just
Yeah.
psycho and
He
evil.
also calls back to the Darth Plagueis moment too
Yeah,
in the opera house, which was awesome.
that hurt me. That physically hurt me.
It physically hurt you?
Okay, not physically, but that was scene 1 of the movie, and I'm like, oh, here we go. But
What physically hurt me was frickin' seeing Mary saying Sith cloning. Never thought it was possible. And I was like, oh, come on. Just, we can do better. We can just say he survived like Darth Maul. Anyway.
But if we're going based on our previous defenses, fan service isn't necessarily a bad thing. I'm sure plenty of people enjoyed the callbacks. I was not one of them in this case.
Yeah, I do like and people compare this ending a lot to Endgame, and it just sucks that it came out in the same year.
Yeah.
But the, like, all the Jedi's, like, voices coming together to, like, back up Rey.
That's kind of cool.
And is cool. I mean, you're not going to remember it that they came out in the same year, like, if you're just casually watching one, at a time, or at a different time or another. And then her holding the 2 lightsabers is awesome. It's the Leia lightsaber and the Solo, and the Skywalker one as well.
Yeah.
It's a good finale.
Yeah. I mean, Rey's pretty powerful in general already, but I liked how on this Sith planet, the Sith channeling themselves through Palpatine, well, it's just not as powerful because Sith are all selfish people. They don't they don't really work to make one guy that much more powerful, but all the Jedi coming together, unified in the Force for this specific purpose of helping this one girl. And I like getting all the voice actors back too. I wish I could have seen them. I wish I
wanted to
like
see,
a visual
like,
moment,
physically see them.
But just hearing
You
their
even
voices,
got Hayden Christensen too.
Yeah, but just hearing their voices was good.
Yeah.
Like being the nerd and me being able to pick out every one. I'm like, oh, cool. Cool. I get.
Yeah, I barely recognize Kanan in it. I don't know if you hear Ahsoka, which wouldn't make sense. Oh, you do. Oh, wait, no, it would make sense. Sorry. I keep thinking for some reason she's survived past sequels.
But we don't know.
We don't know.
You
She'll live forever.
you got to assume she's dead with the her voice in there, but we don't know.
Yeah. Again, we're recording this before in the middle of the Ahsoka show, so we have no idea what's going to happen to her.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of a cool ending. They didn't need to bring Palpatine back at all, but fine, he gets annihilated again. Sure.
I feel like this sequel trilogy would have been well received if they just did Duel of the Fates. If they just did that one instead. You know what I mean? Just went fully committed.
Well, from what I've heard of that story, the thing that was good about it was that it didn't try to backtrack on The Last Jedi. It just, whatever Last Jedi did, it tried to actually build on. So that was the biggest problem with Rise of Skywalker, was that it backtracked too much.
And also Rey
Wasted
had her
time.
staff. She had a staff lightsaber. Like, come on. Like...
Well, yeah, that double-bladed lightsaber makes sense.
Anyway.
Maybe they'll give it to her in the new Rey movie.
Probably.
We haven't talked anything about Rey, somehow. We've gone this whole time talking to everybody about Rey.
She is okay. I don't think she's terrible. I just think she's given no flaws, and that's the problem. Besides, she loses her anger. She loses her cool a couple times throughout the trilogy. That's the only real issue character-wise she has. Daisy Ridley, I think, is an amazing choice. She's an amazing actress.
I mean, this role made her a household name.
Yeah.
She was a nobody.
That's the only problem with her, is that she has barely any flaws, and she's basically just written more and more powerful within each scene just to be like, hey, she can be cool too. That's the only issue.
Yeah. See, Rey is somebody I've always had a mixed feeling about. Like, in Force Awakens, I'm like, okay, you're interesting, but I don't really think too much about you. You're okay, sure. Whatever, you're a little bit too flawless, but all right. And then Last Jedi was like, okay, you're beating Luke Skywalker in a one-on-one fight. You're stealing his books. You're going...
Well, to be fair, he's old.
Well, it doesn't matter. Age doesn't matter with the Force.
He'd have a lightsaber. Oh, okay, we're not getting into this.
Yoda's 900 years old. He's the most powerful one.
He's dead. Anyway.
Anyway. Yeah, Last Jedi was like, okay. I mean, people say Mary Sue, they float that around with her. Last Jedi was like, okay, you're starting to feel more like that to me.
Mm-hmm.
And you could say Rise of Skywalker did that the most, but Rise of Skywalker, for some reason...
But they set up her, she was training.
Yeah, for some reason, Rey was my favorite in Rise of Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
By the end of Rise of Skywalker, I'm like, you know what? You're just an uber powerful Jedi who's flawless and really good at everything. And for some reason, I'm kind of digging that now. Maybe because you're you're finally self-confident as a character. You don't have that internal doubt you had before. Where like, oh, I'm so good, but I don't feel like I am. And that was kind of...
I also really like her new lightsaber, her yellow one. How it's kind of made from her staff material.
Yeah. So that was her whole thing before, was just she didn't feel like she was as good as she was. And she's like, oh, maybe I'll be evil. Maybe. And then Rise of Skywalker was just like, nah, she's just like basically a Jedi Master at this point. She's self-confident. She's pretty driven. She knows exactly what she wants to do. She's just doing it. Mm-hmm. She's probably going to rebuild the Order. And I'm like, you know what? I feel like you're just kind of an idealized Jedi at this point. You're just a badass good guy who's taken down the bad guys, and you're going to take the legacy of everything you've learned and you're going to do better with it. And that's why I'm excited for the Rey movie, because I like that once they stopped pretending she had any real flaws, I'm like, you know what? I'll take you as just the badass good guy. And that's okay. That's valid as a character. I've heard that the way to write perfect characters is that they're good and the world has to change around them. Their goodness is the center which everything has to revolve around, basically. Mm-hmm. And I think the problem was they didn't play her like that earlier. An example I've heard about is like Marty McFly. Like nothing changes. Like Marty McFly doesn't have any character growth in the first movie, but everyone kind of pivots around him. Mm-hmm. His actions change everybody, but his steadfastness is part of the point. And now that they're playing Rey that way, she's actually kind of interesting to me. So I'd like to see her continue. But Daisy Ridley is such a great performer. I have in my notes here.
She's so good.
How like the moment she sees grass for the first time on Maz Kanata's planet, that's a fantastic moment. She only ever knew this desert world. And this
also the moment
it's covered in green. What the?
Also the moment where she's in like the torture chair and Kyle is trying to like torture her, like get into her mind, and she's like fighting as hard as possible. It's also a great acting moment for Oscar Isaac earlier on when he's getting tortured through the mind as well. Great casting. Just they nailed it. And then later on where it's Rey and Kylo fighting in the... See, this is why I thought she was a Skywalker from the beginning, because they're fighting, Rey's clearly losing, and then Kylo's like, you need a teacher, I can show you the ways of the Force, and she's in a defensive stance, and then she like closes her eyes and starts to channel the Force. To me, that was her remembering her training, because when she had the visions of like touching the lightsaber, she had a vision of Kylo Ren and his like Goonies. I can't remember what they're called. The Knights of Ren.
Knights of Ren.
They were there. It looked like they were at the temple that got burned down as well. So that was always my theory. So yeah, just great moments from her and all the rest of the cast as well in terms of acting.
Yeah. What else about Rey? I don't really have a lot to say about her.
She got nice hair.
Oh yeah,
She's got good style.
that's true. Yeah. Yeah, I like that she. I didn't really care when she called herself a Skywalker. I was just like, oh, come on.
I didn't care either. I was just
Really?
like, yeah.
I'm like, well,
I just like they tried to like hype it up a lot too with like John Williams' score, try to make you feel it, and then you just walk out of the theater like, ugh.
I was just okay. I'm like, she never knew her family, and when she did
Mhm.
find out who they were all evil. And Leia and Han were kind of her surrogate parents, and Luke was sort of her mentor as well. So I'm like, okay, I
That's
guess
the
you
thing,
can
though,
call
if-
yourself
if-
Skywalker. I'm like,
If she was
they're all
able
dead.
to have, if it was written, if she was able to spend more time with Luke when he was alive, then I could have seen her taking on that name, or like Luke giving her that name.
Yeah. I just think it's. I can see this cutting either way, where you can say the movie nearly had an overarching story where by her choosing the name Skywalker, you can either say it ruins Last Jedi's idea that lineages don't make somebody great, or you could say it bolsters it, perhaps, in that she came from a bad lineage, and also she came from simultaneously a bad lineage and a lineage of nobodies, made herself a somebody, and broke out of the shadow of her bad lineage. So she did both, really.
Mm-hmm.
And then she chooses the name of the good lineage, even though she doesn't need to, just to say, well, I'm still morally aligned with these guys. Like, well, I proved my point already, but I still call myself a Skywalker out of respect because I don't really have a clan of my own and I still want to belong somewhere. So it's like, well, you did prove your point already. You came from nothing and broke out of the something that you were supposed to be. So she's kind of all in one. So I don't know if it necessarily ruins anything that she calls herself Skywalker.
It's fine.
Yeah.
I think people just hate on it because they just don't like her.
Yeah.
I think that's it. It's fine.
I mellowed on her with time. I used to feel more strongly about it.
Mm-hmm. And then
Now
she
she's-
buries the lightsabers in the desert, where it all started.
Yeah, and I've heard the criticism about that, which is so true, but it's stupid.
Hey, Obi-Wan buried his lightsaber in the desert.
Well, you ever hear that joke where they're like, if you really knew the Skywalkers, you'd know they all hate Tatooine. So why are you burying them there? Whatever.
It's fine.
I know. I don't care. It's
More fan service.
It's fan service. It's nostalgia bait, and I'm like, you know what? Whatever.
You can't bury it on the Falcon. There's no sand on the Falcon.
Yeah. Like that's fine. We saw the Knights of Ren finally.
Barely. Got their ass kicked.
We saw the Knights of Ren, and they got their asses.
Oh, sorry, we
kicked.
saw them.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
They nearly killed Chewie. No, that was Rey. Never mind.
That was Ray. They nearly killed Ben, and then they did that teleporting trick.
That was cool.
I will say, for
Use the
how
dyad
much
for-
it does, the dyad thing doesn't really make that much sense. It's a cool new concept
Yeah.
for the Force, where it's
Finally,
like these people
something
are
different.
these people are so connected that they're able to see each other almost all the time and interact with each other. That's really cool, and that's what was set up well in The Last Jedi that moved on to The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, I'm glad they kept doing.
I also like Adam Driver when he pulls out the lightsaber and then he does like the shrug. He's like, yep.
Yeah.
Leia's lightsaber looks cool too. I like her design.
Yeah. I also like getting to see Luke train Leia, even briefly.
Mhm.
In
That's
in
cool.
those flashbacks.
The deep fake.
Let's see, Rise of Skywalker, I basically just say I like Kylo Ren versus Rey was good. I like Ian McDiarmid. I like getting more of Poe's backstory. Lando, see the Knights of Ren. It's fan service, the movie, but you can be positive on that. Basically, I just say it's a stupid adventure movie.
It's so dumb, but it's fun.
And it's like it's a mystery. Like they're trying to find, what's on the Death Star with the dagger, and like, find the path back to Palpatine. And I'm like, look. As a critic, I catch flack for kind of liking this movie sometimes. And it's like, look, what I always say is I respect The Last Jedi more than this, because The Last Jedi was
right
trying to do new things.
Mm-hmm.
I disagreed with all the things he chose to do, but I respect that he tried. Rise of Skywalker, I don't have much respect for. I think it's a movie made by committee. It sucks in many regards, but it also doesn't piss me off as much as Last Jedi.
Right.
It's doing exactly what it's trying to do. It's being safe and lighthearted, and I connect more with that tone. I have a better time watching Rise of Skywalker. Last Jedi just frustrates me and makes me angry most of the time, even though I think it's a better movie. So yeah, if you're going to ask me, which sequel are you going to pop in if you have a chance?
Force Awakens.
Force Awakens is the answer. If you were going to watch another one, Rise of Skywalker. Last Jedi is the best of the three probably. Well, I don't know. Force Awakens is probably the best, actually.
Yes.
Generally speaking. I have a lot of problems with Last Jedi from not just story reasons, but you've heard a lot of criticisms of The Last Jedi. Well,
do we want to try to defend Canto Bight, or we're just not going to touch it?
We avoided all that, didn't we?
I'm not going to touch it.
Capitalism, bad. He was right.
Capitalism, bad. Slavery, bad.
Animal abuse, bad.
Bad.
War profiteering, bad.
Oh my God. We completely forgot Benicio del Toro was in these movies.
Just one.
That's just, wow. Completely forgot he was there.
Yeah.
Like, he brought up a good, like, a plot line that they never expanded on, where it's like the ships from the Rebels and the First Order all came from, like, the same people.
Yep. Yeah, and he's just like, well, doesn't matter to me. First Order, Rebels. Yeah. I profit off them both.
Hathian smelt.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that's the character choice we're going with, Benicio? All right.
All right. There's probably more we could say, but I think
we're good.
I think we did better than I thought we would.
Yeah.
We kept
These
it
movies
mostly
aren't bad. They're just frustrating.
I think, okay, as a trilogy, they're bad. It's an awful trilogy from start to finish. But as individual movies, they've got
not from start. Force Awakens is
no,
good.
I mean as a trilogy. Force Awakens does stuff. Last Jedi. Force Awakens sets everything up on a T. Last Jedi.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Last Jedi swings like backwards for some reason because it was unexpected to like he wouldn't hit the T, like because that's too expected. And then Force Awakens and then Rise of Skywalker's like, oh no, we got to swing back around and hit the T again because that's what we were trying to do, but we'll like hit it in the like I don't know where I'm going with this metaphor. It's
okay.
They're bad. It's a disconnected trilogy completely, and it makes no sense. It's not cohesive whatsoever, except maybe.
Sure, just put one creator behind it.
Yeah. Kylo Ren was good as a through line. You could argue, like I said, you could maybe argue the theme of being a nobody to greatness was also okay from start to finish with a bit of rocky areas. But the production design is all good throughout. The cast and crew are all good. I don't have complaints about how these movies were made, just how they were written mostly.
Yeah. And I agree.
Yeah.
It's so tough because there's a lot of these movies that I do love because it's part of the franchise that I adore. It's just how it's written. It's usually how modern Star Wars has been a problem throughout the last few years. It's just how it's written.
I'm just at that point as a fan now where I'm not tricking myself into liking them, but I'm starting to accept them.
Yeah.
For what they are. Doing rewatches of the franchise, I'm probably going to continue to not watch these as often as the others. But I'm also like, you know what? Fine. And I think it's because of the TV shows, personally. Shows like Rebels, Ahsoka, The Mandalorian. I don't know if anything else has been set in that era right now, but Book of Boba Fett. Like, whether the shows are okay, but they're setting up this era better now.
Yeah.
Giving more context for the politics leading up to Force Awakens. And I feel like the TV shows are going to do what Clone Wars did for the prequels, and that by the time all the shows are said and done, I'll have more appreciation for the sequels because Dave Filoni bent over backwards to fix them, to fix up the context.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, he did. He'll probably inherit Skywalker Ranch.
Maybe.
I mean, I think George Lucas still has kids.
Yeah. But in terms of Star Wars creative vision, Dave Filoni is the best successor to George Lucas that I've seen thus far.
100%.
And if anyone can give the sequels better context, it'll be him. That doesn't make them a good trilogy still. But as a Star Wars fan who consumes a lot of Star Wars media, I can at least appreciate their place a little bit better. They won't feel as disconnected if the buildup is right. So there is still some hope. There is still some hope for them. I'm slowly coming around on them. I don't feel as strongly hating about them as I used to.
No. Yeah.
The last 4 years have softened me on them a bit. And Ryan's frozen. And he can't hear me. Well, Ryan's gone, so it looks like I gotta close out for him. You can find him on YouTube and TikTok at Ryan Walker Official. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at ThoughtPlay Media. Also, check out the Close Up with Ryan and Joe Facebook page for latest updates on the show. If you listen to us in audio, check out our YouTube channel. And if you're on YouTube, find us anywhere you get your favorite podcasts. We hope to see you on the next Close Up with Ryan and Joe. Till next time.